Kevin Spacey is here. He is an Oscar and Tony Award-winning actor. He's also the artistic director of the Old Vic Theatre in London. This year, he is the star of Netflix's first original series, House of Cards. He plays a scheming politician named Frank Underwood as he navigates his way through Washington. He is nominated for an Emmy for Best Lead Actor for his performance. I am pleased to have him back at this table. Welcome back, sir.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
I want to talk about two things. One, the phenomenon of that in Netflix, and then we'll talk about the actual series itself. How did you get involved? What is your role?
I'm both the leading actor and I'm an executive producer. And it really began when David Fincher got wind while we were shooting Social Network, which
not shabby as a director, by the way.
Not shabby as a director at all. While we were shooting Social Network, which you know I produced, David got wind that the rights to this original BBC series, House of Cards, were available. And MRC had them, and so we began a discussion, David and I, about did we want to work together again as actor and director. We hadn't worked together since we did Seven. And we both wanted to very much. And so the idea of this series came up. We both went off and watched it again because I had remembered watching it. My mother used to love the original House of Cards. Yeah. And he watched it. He hadn't seen it before. He watched it. I watched it. We really thought it could be adapted for the United States if we had Beau Willimon,
yes,
to write it for us, who is our showrunner and our head writer. And I think one of the things that's been interesting about the creative experience is that by partnering with Netflix, which was, we went out to all the other networks and all the cable channels, and we pitched the idea of the series, and every single network loved the idea, but wanted us to do a pilot. And David and Beau and I didn't want to do a pilot. We wanted to start telling a story. Yeah. Because part of the thing about, and we'll talk maybe a little bit about pilot season and the cost of that versus the cost of doing these 2 seasons of House of Cards, part of the problem is that you're then obligated to spend about 45 minutes establishing all the characters, come up with arbitrary cliffhangers, and sort of generally prove that what you're setting out to do is going to work. Netflix was the only network that said, well, we believe in you, and we've run our algorithms, and we've asked our audience and our members, would you watch a series that Fincher and Spacey were doing? And they said, we don't really need a pilot. How many do you want to do? And we were like, 2 seasons? Now,
you said
a
2
lot
seasons.
Of 2 seasons. Now, so it's 26 hours. Now, a lot of people would say, well, that was crazy. It was a big deal. But when you actually break down the craziness of the pilot season, last year, for example, they made 113 pilots. Something like 32 of them went to air. 14 of those were renewed, and most of those aren't left, at a cost of $300 to $400 million. So I think that makes our $100 million House of Cards deal look cost-effective.
It certainly does.
And I always felt that one of these companies that you saw making huge amounts of money, doing an incredible business as a porthole for content, was going to step up and say, well, if we want to compete, we have to get in the business of doing our own original content. So it made sense to me that Netflix stood forward and took the risk. And the fact that it's been as successful as it's been, that now these 9 Emmy nominations have happened, which is the first time that a show that's being streamed has ever been nominated, although it's been available for 8 years. They changed the thing about 8 years ago.
In a sense, it marked the coming of age of streaming, doesn't it?
Yeah. It's been an extraordinary collaboration. David and Beau and myself and the cast. Netflix has been a great partner. MRC has been a great partner. Right. It's been so extraordinary to work on something artistically that's as challenging as this. And I think that what the audience is saying is we want complicated stories. We want stories that ask of us an attention span that I think for many, many years television executives didn't think people had. Exactly. But it's proof. And look, the fact that people are binging on House of Cards, that didn't start with House of Cards. That started with box sets. You know, you talk to anybody, what'd you do this weekend? It's like I stayed in and I watched 2 seasons of Breaking Bad. Exactly. I watched Dexter. I watched Mad Men. There seems to be this... The audience is telling us that they want the control. And maybe in some ways, by putting out the entire season at once, we are showing that we've learned the lesson the music industry didn't learn. Give people what they want, when they want it, in the form they want it in, at a reasonable price, and they'll buy it and they won't necessarily steal it. It's not meaning that some people won't steal it, but
no,
I think you can take a bite out of piracy.
Exactly. You can take a bite out. You can reduce the impact of piracy.
Why is Game of Thrones the most pirated show in the history of television? Because people can't get it fast enough. So there is this thing that audiences are telling us, which is they want the control, that maybe the days, it doesn't mean it's over, but the days of leading an audience to a specified time, 8 o'clock on Monday night, maybe those days are not as much in the future as they are in the past.
If you put a little bit of this in your little speech, you'll be okay.
I'm putting a lot of this in my speech. Right. I might even quote you, Charlie.
Why not?
As Charlie Rose says.
Yeah, indeed. That gives it an imprimatur of quality right there, doesn't it?
Of course.
All right, so let's talk about Francis Underwood, please. So you're going to be the actor. You know House of Cards, and you know what the theme of House of Cards, the original, was. Yeah. It was a wily practitioner of politics who had no morality.
I wouldn't necessarily say that. I would say
I know you would. That's why I said
Michael
it, so you could disagree with me.
Dobbs, who wrote the original book that then the British series was made from, he was Margaret Thatcher's press secretary.
Right.
When he left the government, I think out of revenge, he wrote this book.
Right. And
he based the character in that series and book called Francis Urquhart, although we changed the name to Underwood, so the initials are still F.U.
Right.
He based Francis on Richard III. And a little bit of Iago. That's why in the show, the direct address, where Francis talks directly to the audience, is absolutely from Shakespeare. And luckily, I had the chance to do Richard III with Sam Mendes just before we began shooting House of Cards.
At the Old Vic.
At the Old Vic and around the world, and we did it here at BAM.
Right.
And what was really valuable about that experience was it taught me how to do it down the barrel of a lens, because I'm not looking in people's eyes, but I had the experience of 198 performances around the world of looking directly into audiences' eyes and watching the glee of being included and being made a co-conspirator. And so that memory for me is so strong that now I'm sort of treating it, I don't think I would have known how to play it if I hadn't had that experience, but now I treat it as if it's your best friend that you're saying things to that you wouldn't necessarily share with your wife.
Yeah, and I want to share with you my unvarnished observations of what I just heard and saw.
Exactly.
This is whatever was said. This is the reality of what just happened.
Yes, and I think to some degree it's also an interesting thing how in Richard III, for example, Richard is always turning to the audience and saying, "Okay, I'm going to try this thing here. Now watch." And then he goes and he does it, and it succeeds. And he goes, "Can you believe I got away with that?" And I think that emboldens him as a character. And I think that it's also true in the series that there's a kind of, how far can I push it? And it's been very interesting to exist now in the last year. We shoot in Baltimore, so we spend some time in Washington, D.C. We did the White House Correspondents' video, which we were very grateful to be a part of, and I was very happy about that. But it's very interesting how people in real politics are responding to the show.
What are they saying?
Well, I think privately they're saying it's closer than anyone has ever filmed before. Publicly they're probably not saying that, but I think there is this. It must be very interesting for the American public to be watching a Congress that is stuck in gridlock and that doesn't move forward. I think Boehner the other day, as a badge of honor, said it's not about how many bills we pass, it's how many bills we repeal. And to be watching a fictional majority whip in a fictional Congress that, yes, he's diabolical, but he's extremely effective.
Okay, back to my original question in terms of how Machiavellian he was. Is your interpretation of Francis Underwood that he believes he has to be the way he is because he believes the means justify the end, and his end is okay?
Well, we don't know where his end is yet, but I will say this, that...
I can tell you where it is. More and more power.
I will say this, that I think that he... Look, there are a lot of politicians that people would have called, or still call, ruthless. And yet they were remarkably effective. I mean, Lyndon Johnson certainly was called ruthless by a lot of people. But I also think that there is now, partly because of this series of books that came out about his life, a kind of re-examination of, well, yes, he was this and yes, he was that, but he passed 3 civil rights bills in a very short presidency. What I liked about the film Lincoln for example, is that it showed Abraham Lincoln, perhaps the most sainted of all presidents in terms of the way people view him. They showed him as a real politician, willing to make deals
right.
in order to get something passed that was more important than those little positions that he was giving a whole bunch of people in order to get the votes he needed. What I think people might enjoy about Francis as a character is that he has no allegiances. He has no allegiance to party. It's not about Democrats or Republicans or ideology or passion. It's about opportunity to move forward. That's what he sees, and that's what he does. And I think that's a very interesting thing, because we have a Congress, obviously, that is just gridlocked in ideology. Won't move because of, I believe in this and I'm not willing. And look, we all know the greatest acts that have happened in this country in terms of progress have been because people learned how to compromise. I've been very impressed with John McCain the last couple of months. He's been showing an extraordinary ability to be a sane and reasonable voice.
So do we say, wake up, America, this is the way politics work? With some literary license, this is the way politics work. You know, and this is, as they famously said about, there are two things you don't want to see made, sausage and legislation.
Unless it's legislation about sausage.
Exactly. Then it's okay. But the point is that, are you saying that this is the way democracy works, folks?
We can go back and I think look through history at great leadership, and leadership that was strong and powerful and willing to do whatever they had to do in order to get something moving forward that actually benefited people's lives. That's, I think, what we all want to see, is that things move forward. And I think that we have been in a kind of status quo. It doesn't just say that, you know, there hasn't been some progress, but it's a very interesting question that I find the series poses. That's all about that morality, and I think it's fascinating for an audience.
So tell me this. You, who had a very fine career here and an Oscar career here, decide that you want to go to the Old Vic, okay? Literally, in a moment, turning your back on Hollywood. You now produce things, this included. I mean, the question is, what does Kevin want?
You know, you would think, if you look at it from the outside, that I'd be satisfied, you know, but I'm not. I want to do better work. I want to do better stories. I want to be a better actor. That's the one thing I will say about going to the Old Vic, that I absolutely know that the 10 years that I've spent there, working with Trevor Nunn, working with Matthew Warchus, working on the plays that I've done a play every year for the past 10 years. It's made me a better actor. I'm a better actor now than when I left. And thank God for that. I didn't stay, and I would simply argue with you that I wasn't turning my back on Hollywood. I was walking towards something, not away from something. But I also know that quite often when you get to a place that I got to after American Beauty, which was incredible, that it's very easy to then start doing lots and lots of movies you shouldn't do because they're paying you lots of money and because you're trying to keep on those lists and be that guy. And I just went, I did it. I don't have to top myself. I don't have to spend another 10 years, you know, proving that I did it. I want to make a left turn and go towards something that is not about my career, not about my ambition, is about a company. And I've recently, you don't know this, but when we did Richard III around the world, I had a documentary film crew following us. And we've cut this documentary about what it's like to be a company member. First of all, tours rarely happen in 12 cities around the world anymore, number one. But number two, there is something about the act of doing a play every night, what you learn about yourself, what you learn about the play, what you learn about audiences, that I think sets you up and puts you in a position where you are better equipped to understand how you can tell a story on film or in television, because you understand that relationship with an audience. That is just inherent and unique in the process of doing theater. So I'm going to be very happy to be able to share that documentary, because it is one of the first intimate looks at what it's like to be in a company of actors for the period of time that we did it.
And we'll appreciate all the things you said, the sense
I think you really do get to know them as people, and these are many of them just
and
journeyman
where's this
actors.
documentary out? And
Next year, it will be out next year.
does it have a title?
Not quite yet. You know, Sam and Kevin's big Shakespeare adventure, Around the World with Dick the Tit. I'm not sure.
How are you different as an actor? I mean, what is it you know you didn't know, if you can put that in words?
It's, I can only compare it to sports. Why is it that watching Andy Murray over the past 10 years get better and better and better and learn how to work in front of a crowd
and fail and fail and
fail
fail
and fail and fail and get to a point where,
fail,
you know, when he won Wimbledon this year is one of the greatest sporting events to happen. Not, you know, for him, of course, personally, for Great Britain, for lots and lots of reasons. But when you watch, I use the analogy of sports because that's kind of how we feel, you know. You're getting up every night, you're playing a game, but it's a new game every time you're doing it. You're working on a part of your game that you weren't working on the night before. The other actors you're working with, your partners, are changing and shifting and moving and growing, and it's different audiences, and you come every night to learn and get better. And the thing about only working in film is that you learn to work in 2-minute segments. And you learn quite often to work in more isolation. You work with one actor 1 week and you don't see him again for another 3 weeks, and then you do another scene together. It is about working together with a company of actors every single night, and what that does in terms of creating a family. I put it to you this way. In the theater, it's a full meal. And when you make a movie, it's a lot of appetizers, but you don't ever leave satisfied.
Yeah. Some people say that the theater is an actor's medium. Film is a director's medium.
I would agree with that. Because ultimately, you know, it's their painting. You know, it's not my painting. Unless I'm producing and I have some say in a final cut, it's their painting. And so my job is to here's a great story. I love this story. Jack Lemmon once told me this story.
Oh, go ahead.
He said, Billy Wilder once said, he said, Jack, you're like a supermarket. And Jack said, what do you mean? He said, you're like a supermarket. There's aisles and aisles and aisles of items and choices. And I say, I want one of those, and I want 2 of those, and I want 1 of those. And you bring them to the checkout on it, and they're on the thing, and I take them in the bags, and they're there. You're like a supermarket. And in a sense, I like that analogy. You know, you're like a supermarket. You have to be willing to give a director all the choices they might want. And then they're going to shape the performance. They're going to decide whether that one line you did, they're going to use the ironic way you did it, or they're going to use the really harsh way you did it, they're going to use the quiet way you did it. They're the one in editing that's shaping that performance. And in the theater, you are shaping it. No one's shaping it.
And what happened to the director's gene in you?
I still have it. And I will, without question. I think I've directed at the Old Vic, you know, Theatre, and I think I will once I'm done at the Old Vic, which is coming up in the next year, that I'll be done.
Why have you marked this time to go?
Well, I made a 10-year commitment, number one. I will have fulfilled that commitment and gone 1 more year after that, because I kind of look at the first year as a startup year. Right. So I'll go 11 years, but my association with the Old Vic has been going on 17 years by the time I leave.
Okay, and then what's life after that?
Well, what's been incredible is that House of Cards sort of has begun, and it, you know, we may have a life beyond the first 2 seasons. So we'll see if that continues. I'm certainly up for it. And then I don't know. I think there'll be a whole new chapter. I'm not sure what it will be yet, but it's very exciting to sort of have these sort of periods of my life where I specifically focused on a certain thing for a while and then shifted my focus and did another thing. And I suspect I'll probably do another shift, and I'll direct at some point.
And do you find yourself pretty good at this sort of business end of all this?
I have.
The deals and the transactions and building something that can be sustainable.
I hope I've proved that I've been pretty good at business with respect to both how my film company is run with Dana and how the Old Vic is run. You know, you have to remember, we have successfully proved that you can run a major British institution for 10 years without any public subsidy. We get no public subsidy, and we have 1,000.
You've raised most of it.
I sing and dance all the time for fundraising. That's why I'm trying to set up an endowment now for the Old Vic for the future, so that the next artistic director doesn't have to spend nearly as much time fundraising as I have.
Let's talk more about House of Cards in terms of what it means, because it seems to me that it means a lot to you?
I'll tell you why. Because for a long time, television was not taken seriously as an art form, and I think in the last 15 years it finally has.
All the reasons we said. Yeah.
And it is very exciting to be a part of something that at the same time, television is finally being seen as a genuine art form. Technology has rushed forward at the same time.
Exactly.
So the ways in which people are discovering it, the ways in which people are viewing it, the demands the audience is telling us, there's a tremendous and exciting future about what we can do, and all of the talent that's out there. This is going to be a big part of my McTaggart lecture, is about talent and about supporting talent. There have been figures who have believed in supporting emerging talents. You can go back to the days of the studio system. You can look at Granada Television in London. You can look at the Royal Court Theatre. You can look at the work we did at the Old Vic and Old Vic New Voices. You can look at what HBO did in keeping that flame alive of the most extraordinary, trailblazing storytellers. And so it feels like we're kind of in a Wild West. But we know what works, and we've always known what works, and that's about emboldening and empowering artists and giving them the autonomy that this instrument has now shown they deserve.
Let talent be talent.
Let talent be talent.
Yeah. This is what you told NPR. I'm better at my job when I'm directed. So what do you want from a director? Because you've got in David.
Wow. Fincher, what I love working about Fincher is and I've said this about when he works with, I've seen him work with younger talent, and he'll do take after take after take after take. You know, he sort of has a reputation. But he doesn't do a lot of setups, but he will do a lot of takes. And someone said, why does he do all those takes? And I said, well, sometimes he's just trying to beat the acting out of you. And even for someone like me.
You know, move beyond the acting?
Move beyond the handles and the ways in, and the gestures and the props and the stuff you add on. Yeah. When David is able to distill a performance to the words and what a character is experiencing, feeling, and wanting, and it's very clean, you can see that kind of incredible precision with the way he directs actors. And I love it because it's like working with someone with an X-Acto blade. He just shaves this off, or he'll suggest something. What if we do this? He'll give me an idea about how to approach a line, a scene, in a way I hadn't thought of. And then thank God, he cuts all the bad stuff out. And all of my swearing when I screw up.
How often is that?
A lot. I suspect there'll be a blooper reel that could be as long as 13 hours.
Really?
Yeah.
So in terms of learning politics, there's Lyndon Johnson. You went down and talked to Kevin.
Yeah. And Steny Hoyer. And obviously I know
both sides.
President Clinton, and I've been around politics.
What does President Clinton say about all this?
Oh, I love that show. It's so good.
You know.
Yeah, we watched it over 3 days. It was good.
It's true. See, that's the thing about you. I mean, I could name a list of characters who would respond to the film, like Johnny Carson.
Yeah.
Well, Johnny would say, "Well, I'd watch it, but it's on a Thursday, and I don't work on Thursday."
And on and on and on. Is that still part of your repertoire?
I love doing impressions. It's so much fun to learn them. You know, sometimes when I'm doing a hosting thing or a speech or stuff, I'll try to sneak some in. And I don't know, I've always loved it, you know, and it goes right back to, I know what it goes back to. It goes back to the fact that I could make my mother laugh.
Is that right?
And when I made my mother laugh, that was the greatest thing in the world.
Is there a certain skill about that? I mean, and about mimicry?
I think it's really, I mean, to me, I don't know whether this is true with other people who do imitations, but to me it's always just a bit about how it sounds to me. I have an ear for how it sounds, and so I'm able to watch Johnny Carson, for example,
and just know that he had one of those voices that was in the back of his throat because he was from the Midwest, he was from Nebraska. Yeah, and you know, and of course the gestures and all the stuff he used to do. It's great fun.
Martin Scorsese had an article in the New York Review arguing that we need to stress visual literacy today. You know.
Yeah, and he's also done so much in terms of film preservation and sort of trying to introduce the great films to a younger generation. It's funny, you know, when you talk to people who are younger and that they don't really know anything, you know, before 1980, and you go, you really got to go back and look at some of the great films because we are where we are because in large measure the people have been hugely influenced by the greats that came before.
Have you ever done a lecture about, I mean, McTaggart will be part of that, but about the creative process for an actor? Yeah.
Yes, I've talked about it, and I do a lot of workshops through my foundation as well, and one of the things I do talk about is the process of what it's like to be an actor and what it is like to try to create a role. And some of it's, you know, you have to air your dirty laundry through the course of rehearsal. You got to be bad. You got to fall on your ass and fall on your face, and it doesn't work. And you know, it's only when you really start to get in front of an audience and you start to feel something and you start to say, oh, this is not working, and this is taking too long, and this isn't as funny as I thought it was going to be. And you know, it's like a breath between an audience. And you know, when we're doing a film or television, the crew becomes your audience in large measure. You know, when you're rehearsing something, you sort of pay attention to, does this seem to be working? And I trust my instincts, and I trust the collaborators that I work with. So you can never just only trust your own voice. You've got to trust the people around you, because they will help you be better. And together we can, you know, distill something to a point where we think it really works.
Last question. As you leave the Old Vic, will you come back to New York, to America to live?
I think I'll always end up being of both places. It's been such a huge part of my life. It's been such an incredible place to live in. I really love Great Britain. I really do. And they've made me feel so welcome. And I'm just so pleased to be there.
Well, you're a hero over there because of.
But I will, absolutely. And I'm here now, obviously, 6 months out of the year while I do House of Cards.
Series is nominated for 9 Emmys, including Best Lead Actor for Kevin Spacey. Season 2 begins sometime in early 2014. Thank you for coming.
Thank you.
Pleasure to have you.
Great to see you again.
Kevin Spacey. Thank you for joining us. See you next time.